This is the Wheelhouse Podcast. It's lovely, lovely to be in a room full of people. Well, wait a minute. I'm not in a room full of people because Kate Bates, Olympian, Commonwealth Games, world champion, isn't here. Hi, Kate. Where are you?
Alas, Joel, I'm not. Hello. It is good to see you. I'm missing the bunker, I've got to be honest. I would love to say that I'm in Paris because, of course, we've just had the announcement of the Tour de France routes for 2023. But that would be a lie, Joel. I am just stuck in Sydney this week. So, yes, close, but not close enough, unfortunately.
They're going to make a video game about you one day. Where in the world is Kate Bates from the makers of the Carmen Sandiego franchise?
I loved that show growing up.
Yeah.
I did. No, hold on. Did I just call it a show?
You did. That's okay. Yeah, that's all right.
I think there's a modern day Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego.
There is.
For the youth. But
Could
I'm
be
not
a
a
doco.
gamer. So
It
could be a doco.
You're not here. That's okay. It's still a very, very exciting show. We've got so much to cover. Of course, the official reveals for the two tours, the DOS Tour courses next year, Tour de France Men's
tours.
and Fem are both out. I can't wait to get into that because we've got some very exciting exclusive reveals come out. I'd just like to introduce you quickly to your new co-host. This is Lord Vader.
Ugh.
Just
What
saying,
is that?
I needed some company. That's our new prop for the set. That's Lord Vader himself. I gradually am weaving Star Wars into the sport of cycling.
Okay, you've just held up what looks like a little death mask with glowing eyes, flashing eyes.
That's very much what it is. So welcome to the galaxy. I'm glad to know that I'm winning you over to Star Wars. Now, you weren't in Paris for the course reveals. That's okay. Hey, just quickly, because you are out and about, have you got a Cav update? Because you know we love Cav updates on the Wheelhouse Podcast.
If you could hear me rolling my eyes, I just rolled my eyes. Unacceptable, Mark Cavendish. It's like he's toying with our hearts and our souls, Joel.
He's playing with our souls.
He is. I heard a rumor this week that he may be headed to Israel. However, I think that's a false flag too. But apparently B&B Hotels was supposed to have a press conference this week and then it got cancelled. But then he turns up at the Tour de France route announcement. So clearly he's planning on being there. I've had enough. My patience is tested. I'm done.
You're not having it.
I don't know if I even care anymore whether he can break the record because I feel like he needs to win back our affection. Is that a bit harsh, do you think?
Do you reckon that's a bigger priority for Mark Cavendish, winning back the affection of the Wheelhouse Podcast than chasing that 35th stage win? I reckon it would be.
Well, it should be. I mean, come on now.
We'll talk about the course and what it looks like for Cav's pursuit of that record, because I reckon there's stages there that could well be great for him, but there's stages that are going to be an absolute nightmare for him and sprinters in general. We're going to get into that very shortly. Just quickly, I just want to point. Did you hear Ethan Hayter saying, "You know what, Filippo Ganna's hour record? Pfft, hold my beer. I've got this. I could do it. Give me a crack."
Yes, wow. I know. Look, I'm actually a big fan of the Hayter brothers, both Leo and Ethan. But his rationale for that comment, Joel, was that he beat Dan Bigham in the time trial at the Nationals, and Dan Bigham used to hold the hour record, and if he could beat him, then surely he could. I don't know. I think that takes a lot of confidence, and good on him. You know, he's the one who looks like a bit of a twit if he falls perilously short. So
well, he won't because they'll build a special Shell engine in him now with that sponsorship.
Yes.
He'll be powered by petrol.
Oh, to have the confidence, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I think if we could carry that through life, we'd possibly, I don't know, have a Wheelhouse private jet or something.
Well, I do know that new UK PM Rishi Sunak is a big bike fan. So maybe Ethan's just getting, running up a bit of currency with the new Prime Minister. Although, Rishi, I don't think you're going to have much time for cycling, given your new job of trying to fix the UK. But anyway, there's links there. There's links everywhere. We might touch on that a bit later. I'm stalling because I can't stand it, the excitement the route reveal. Now, there was some speculation a few days before the official reveal, the big ceremony. Some of it was off the mark. Let's get into the course. We will start in beautiful Basque Country as well, but no week one time trial. Kate Bates, what do you make of it to start off with?
Good question. It was a really interesting presentation. Of course, I was glued to the screen after Merksy sent me the link to watch it, that is. I mean, the first thing that I noticed is that it's a bike race, right? Of course, the Tour de France is a bike race. But for every one shot of a bike rider, there were 50 shots of something beautiful, some kind of scenery, some kind of tourism ad. And it reminded me that the pull of the Tour de France is so much more than just the bike riders itself. And there's a lot of people who are really interested in the route, not just because of the technical sporting elements, but kind of planning their next holidays. I certainly know that there was an element of us doing that, right? I think it's a really interesting parcours next year. My first real observation is that Christian Prudhomme must really dislike at least one, if not all, of the sprinters. It's not a very sprint-friendly race. It is definitely one for the climbers. What they do beautifully is they weave the history of the race into the new versions, and they do some of that in the most beautiful ways. But there were a couple of really funny moments, Joel, that made me laugh because I was thinking of the grandeur of these incredible stages. But then they talked about one place, Moraines Monton, I think it was called, which is apparently the capital of wooden toys. The world capital of wooden toys. So I thought, okay, fantastic. And then there was Le Markenstein, which is the climb that Annemiek van Vleuten made famous in 2022 by dominating so much. And essentially that's where she won herself the maillot jaune, because of course the women's tour, their route was announced as well. But that one is famous for hosting in the 80s one round of a slalom World Cup or something like that.
Oh, how good. Wooden toys and slalom World Cups.
Yeah, I love that they're pulling all of these little elements out. But the biggest thing, because it's pretty exciting, is we go through all 5 mountain ranges, Joel. Do you know what that means? That means it's really good for the Aussies.
Yes,
because
Aussies.
We've got Jack Haig, we've got Glutes O'Connor, we've got Joe Hindley. We are strong in the climbing stakes at the moment. And look, we're strong in the sprinters stakes too, but you don't win. GC doesn't hang on the balance of whether we have good sprinters or not. It hangs on the balance of what's in there for our climbers. So I'm a little bit excited about that. I think this presents the biggest opportunity for the Australian riders that we've had in decades.
I love to hear that. 8 mountain stages, 4 summit finishes, so many difficult to pronounce peaks. I'm not even going to bother. There are just so many.
Send help for next July.
Send help, yeah. A multi-mountain stage in stage 20 as well. Now, if I may, you're mentioning our Aussies, and when you said, you know what this means, I went to say it's good for the glutes. I said that for a reason. Because I have an exclusive reveal here. As you know, we have a lot of friends on the Wheelhouse podcast. One of them is Western Australia's favourite son, Ben O'Connor. Now, Glutes O'Connor, we're on nickname terms. We call him Glutes. We sent him a ping. We DM'd him to just say, "G'day, Glutes. How you going? What do you make of the course?" And if you don't mind, I'd love to read out verbatim the exclusive response from Ben O'Connor, which I'm holding up for those listening on now, just to prove this isn't a ruse. Now, Ben O'Connor, g'day, Ben. What do you make of the course? Now, Kate has said it's good for Aussies. Ben says it has less technical difficulties, wind, cobbles, open roads like last year. A lot of the this year, I should say. A lot of the climbs are very long and they're preceded by decent hard mountains. So perhaps some days will be kind of attritional, says Ben, righto. But certainly better for pure climbers. So there you go, Kate. Lack of TT kilometres. Now, there's only 22 TT kilometres in the entire race, which is interesting. Is it perhaps a shame for me, says Glutes, but at the same time, maybe not. I've always liked the big mountain days, and it reminds me sometimes of the big days you do in the Giro. All in all, I'm a much bigger fan of the course than I was of this year's. How's that?
See, how good. Thank you, Ben. That's fantastic. Yeah. I'm so pleased that he weighed in with his opinion, because otherwise we'd just be sitting here kind of telling him what his opinion should be, Joel.
Here's what Ben O'Connor might have said. Now he goes on to say, thanks so much. Who do I send the invoice to? So I'll leave that with Merksy. But no, we did say we expect to see you in yellow for a day or two. No pressure. Massive thanks to Ben O'Connor. But I think you're right. There's some excitement among the Aussies. As you say, there might be a sprint stage or two where we have some hopes. But with all of these climbs, some kind of attritional climbs, according to Glutes O'Connor, it's an exciting race and possibly, as you say, best chance in years for the Aussies.
There is. And I also just want to give a little bit of viewer feedback, Joel. I received a message yesterday suggesting that you're a very big fan. You've suggested that Ben O'Connor be immortalised in a statue.
In bronze,
What about like a Madame Tussauds cycling edition with some wax sculptures?
A waxy O'Connor.
Yes, a waxy O'Connor. That was suggested. I mean, we won't labour on the point, but I just thought it was relevant given Glutes O'Connor's dialed in.
I was going to say you can be more precise with sculpting in wax, so the glutes would be quite life accurate, whereas in bronze it's kind of a rough representation of the glutes. And I know Ben's a big fan of his glutes, and everyone else is as well. So I'm all for it. I think
this is one of those moments where we should move on.
Press on, shall we?
Press on. Now, something that I think there's quite a few controversial little points about this this course reveal. I was about to say this year, but of course it's next year. The 22K of time trial, not sure about that. That's fairly non-traditional. That won't please a lot of the riders. I think that could create a bit of a easier decision for the likes of Remco about whether he's going to ride the Giro or the Tour. Certainly the Giro shapes up as being a little friendlier to him. But I don't know, he's one of the world's best climbers at the moment too. So there is that.
Yep.
But they have put a stage in, it's stage 9, where they go, Joel, over, and I'm going to try and say this correctly, the Poix de Dôme is how I'll say it. And it is a climb that has not been in the Tour for 35 years, but it has this enormous amount of fantastic history racing over it. Now, they suggested that it may never come back into the Tour because it was a very narrow road. And they've had all these roadworks, including putting a train line up there. And so they thought it wouldn't be possible, but they've found a way. I'm very happy to say they've found a way. Now, in 1975, Eddie Merckx, it was the first time that he won up there. But when he was racing, one of the fans, Joel, punched him in the kidney. And ended his hopes for overall victory because of the injury. Because after winning so much in France, of course, he was a Belgian, the French fans were sick of seeing him win so much, and they lashed out, gave him a good old punch in the kidneys while he was climbing, and that was it. He didn't win the Tour that year.
Oh, my goodness.
So
Violence up high. A punch in the kidney of all the things to do.
Punch in the kidneys. Yes.
And that's a volcano too, so volcanic behaviour, It
is. But there was also a very famous, probably the most famous battle between Jacques Anquetil and, of course, Raymond Poulidor, who we have spoken a lot about at this year's Tour because of his grandson Mathieu van der Poel, and they were racing up there for victory. There was 54 seconds that divided them in the GC battle, and they were a couple of riders who were up the road. The pair were sticking together to make it a little bit of a cat and mouse kind of competition, and while Poulidor prevailed on the day, Anquetil at the end of the day still had a 14-second advantage. And a very famous quote from him when they said, oh my gosh, that gap has narrowed very significantly. He said, well, it's 13 seconds more than I need to win. So I like that. It's true. That we have seen a huge amount of action on this climb. And for anybody in their 30s, really, they would barely know about the climb. It's more of a kind of romantic thing from the past. And so I think that that's really cool that they've put that back in this year because, you know, modern day fans, well, we've certainly never seen imagery of this climb beamed around the world, because the last time it was raced, you got it on VHS many months later, or you read about it in magazines many months later, but you didn't actually get to see the action unfold. So that's pretty exciting to me.
That's fantastic. And a couple of names you've mentioned there, of course, the legendary Poo and Eddie Merckx himself. Now, let's talk about contenders, and there's a convenient segue here because Merckx actually came out during the week. Now, a fellow Belgian, from one Belgian to another, he said to Remco, now I think this was before the course reveal,
yes,
throw all your eggs in the Giro basket. Now, I love what he said here. He said the climbs, the high altitude, the chance of bad weather, meaning some high altitude climbs might not even happen. But he also said, just go to Italy, focus on Italy because of the food as well. I really like that because it's like, focus on the food, even though you probably won't be able to eat it because you'll be competing in the Giro.
Yes, I found this really bizarre, to be honest. I think, Merckx's kind of getting, not our Merckx, of course, a little bit flamboyant in his older age, because his advice to Remco really had nothing to do with the sporting element of the Giro. He was like, it's such nice places. The fans
Great
are
spot.
so good. The food is so good. Like, go to the Giro. Okay. I mean, look, bit of a conspiracy theory here, but Merckx is kind of known to be quite protective of his own records. And while he's very supportive publicly of the up-and-coming riders and says, you know, wonderful things, he also sometimes kind of lays the boot in about how, they're good, but I was better. And, you know, I'm just wondering if he's kind of in his sparkling age, wondering if maybe some of these young riders will come through and perhaps nullify some of his legacy and some of his history. And, you know, this is the advice he's now metering out.
Well, you look
Go
at
to the Giro, enjoy the food, the places and the fans.
Yeah. Go there, just have a holiday at the Giro. But looking at Remco's year in 2022, it's sort of like, well, he's sort of threatening to be in at least in the paddock with other goats, at least in the vicinity of other goats based on his form this year. So there's some
paddock with other goats.
Look, he's entitled to be a member of the herd based on his year this year. I know he listens to the Wheelhouse. He's a massive friend of the Wheelhouse. We're a friend of his and a fan. Hello, Remco, from all of us here in the bunker and wherever Kate Bates is as well. Hello to you.
I mean, he did literally, just in case people think we're making that up, he literally told me, and we have it on video and audio, I listened to your podcast.
Sure did.
Said it right to my face. So
no, also, when did he say this? He said this minutes after
winning his world championship, sitting there in his beautiful, resplendent in his rainbow jersey. He looked me dead in the eye, Joel, and he told me he's a Wheelhouse listener.
I love that. The priorities. It's like you've just won the Rainbows, an incredibly dominant race, but on your mind is the Wheelhouse podcast. As proven, just saying, absolutely loves it. Now, let's go back to the tour course. So now, talking of contenders, we've spoken on this podcast about the matchup between Tadej Pogacar, your cousin Jonas Vingegaard, and of course Remco Evenepoel next year. Now, Pog was there. Pog was sitting there in Paris at the reveal, smiling, licking his lips, smiling broadly at the climb. More climbs than a rock climbing centre, this course. He absolutely loved it. Now, your cuzzy buzzy, your good mate Jonas, didn't turn up. Now,
I know.
I'd say he would have been licking his lips too, but what about not going to the reveal? Is that a bit... I know you're on holidays, mate, but make an appearance, perhaps.
I can see both sides of this. I think he didn't turn up because he's had some not insignificant problems since his tour victory around the gravitas of what he's achieved, how that's thrown him into the public eye and dealing with the anxiety around all of that. I absolutely respect the riders need to do whatever they need to do. They're not performing monkeys. They're athletes. They're humans.
Yep.
In saying that, now I'm going to flip it to the other side. In saying that, I think it is a little bit disrespectful to not turn up to the team to the course announcement following the year that you've won.
Well, as the winner, that's the point, isn't it?
As the incumbent maillot jaune wearer,
yes.
I was very disappointed he wasn't there. And yeah, I mean, the only thing I could think that is a decent reason would be that he's not doing too well, and we just have to respect that.
He's been open about that this year after the Tour, the toll, the attention that took on him. And look, of course, first priority, hope that he is okay. But you do make a really valid point. It's a bit glaring when you're the reigning champion and you're not there. And
I unfortunately think that could also work against him in terms of the pressure that's put on him for next year, because now people are talking about it even more. Can he handle the pressure? Is he up for it? And also his competitors, if they want to be, a little bit nasty, which, we can debate ad nauseum whether that's the right way to approach racing, but they can kind of use that against him too. Little comments about how's he feeling, how's he handling it. I don't think the media is going to be very kind to him around it come next July as well, pressure-wise. So, a really tough one, but bummer that he wasn't there. But I tell you who else had a very big smile on his face was Romain Bardet, because he is the current Strava record up Puy de Dôme, which is what we talked about as well earlier. It's said to be a pretty relentless monster of a climb. For him to have that Strava record, he's almost like the incumbent king up there. He's very pleased. Very, very good course for him as well.
We spoke about Cav. I'm sorry to mention him again. I know you're angry at him, but looking for
he wasn't enjoying the presentation, I'll tell you that.
Well, is there a stage? Have race directors had a think about that record, that 35? Is there a stage?
There is, actually. So into Bordeaux, there is a stage that he won back in 2010, I'm going to say. And I reckon, it's absolutely a sprinter's day. And in fact, there could be up to 9 stages for the sprinters if the teams are motivated to keep it that way. But I think that stage in particular, given his history on it, it would be very poetic and romantic if he were to take the record for the most stages ever won at the Tour de France for Mark Cavendish into Bordeaux, a town where he won a stage very early on in his career. So I feel as though Prudhomme may have popped that one in for the potential for that to turn well. But I just want to deep dive a little bit further into the potential for 9 sprint stages, because you look at the course and you're like, that could be a breakaway. But what we've got to remember is when you have a course like this with so many mountains, most of the teams aren't going to send a team to support sprinters. So even if they have a sprinter and a few support riders, it will weigh, the balance of team selection will weigh more on who can get through the mountains. And so then when it does come to the sprint stages, there's less teams to control it, less teams to chase back breakaways and keep it together for the finish. So it isn't just about what the parcours look like, but what it does for the team dynamics. And whatever team Cav ends up on, he would have to be on a team that was 100% there to keep it together for sprint stages. He couldn't. And an example is when he was riding in the service of Sky back in 2012, when Bradley Wiggins won the Tour de France, and Cav was in the rainbow jersey, and by halfway through the tour, he was getting water bottles and just being the workhorse for the guys, wearing his rainbow jersey for Bradley Wiggins to try and win that year's edition. So it's, if he ends up on a team with dual strategies again, it just won't work for him. So I don't know. Do you think he was waiting for the course reveal to decide which team to go to? I don't know.
Just waiting for that announcement of the adjustment of rules. It's like sprinters may use a helicopter for the mountain stages this year only. Let's look at Aussies really quickly. So Caleb Ewan, bling bling, of course. We've only been speaking about Caleb in disappointing terms in recent times because of his omission at Wollongong, etc. What do you reckon?
It'll be a tough one for him. No, I don't think so.
No.
Caleb's such a fast man, but he does really struggle over the climbs. I think that the sprinters who will come to the fore, we may have a Mark Cavendish if he has a team, but the first really pure sprint stage doesn't come until a couple of stages in. They've already gone over some fairly significant lumps, but I think Van Aert will be looking at potentially Peter Sagan, if he can come back into form. Definitely Michael Matthews. So the sprint stages all have a bit of a caveat around them that they could also be puncher kind of territory. And that's where Michael Matthews, I think, could be a really good challenge. But, again, I think whether it's Michael Matthews or we're looking at Glutes O'Connor or Jack Haig, of course, massive year for the Aussies. Like, I just see potential written all over it. And I wonder if Richie Port's sitting back with his pancakes and espresso thinking, bummer, like if this course had have happened in the peak of his career, I think we could have seen him edge even closer to that top step.
You heard it here first. Come back, Richie Port. Don't rule it out. Do you think, look, all these names you mentioned, do you think we will see an Aussie in yellow at some point next year?
I think this course is perfectly designed to see an Australian in the maillot jaune at the 2023 Tour de France. It's the best course for the Aussies that we've seen in quite a while. And I reckon in the background, just quietly, Glutes O'Connor, even with his very humble message, we're looking at you. We're already making the wax statue.
No pressure, Glutes.
Pressure.
Said, we're pretty sure we're going to see you in yellow, pal.
Yeah.
Bit of a throwdown, wasn't it? Bit of a throwdown. Yeah. It's exciting, though. It's a big reveal, and I love that the contenders talk is already beginning. There will not be an episode of this podcast and any other cycling-related media that doesn't speculate about the Tour from this day forward. Now, excitingly, let's move on the Wheelhouse podcast. My name's Joel Spreadborough. Kate Bates isn't here, but is delivering as per. Now,
yes.
Exciting times. Now, the Tour de France Femme course is out as well. Now, this is a step up, a very literal step up in more ways than one. So, Marianne Roos, is it Roos? I'm so sorry. Help me with the race director.
Yes.
She said, are we responding to criticism around a lack of climbs and a bit of a bland course perhaps at times with a real dial-up for the Femmes course? What do you think of it?
I think the Tour de France Femmes course is a beautiful course, and it will be full of suspense the way it is built. Certainly stage one is for the sprinters. Lorena Vibes will definitely have a highlighter firmly over that to try and take the first maillot jaune of the race. It's definitely got a few stages in there for the punchers as well, which I think is a lot more variable in the women's scene. We haven't yet got one or two riders who in these kind of tours dominate on those kind of days when you're looking outside of Marianne Vos. So it's a very big opportunity for her too. But quite importantly and quite beautifully, on the seventh stage, which is the penultimate stage, the Queen's stage, they go up the Col d'Aspin, which first emerged into history in 1910 for the men. So that's fantastic. But then it goes up the 17-kilometre monster, the beast of the Col de Tourmalet.
I wanted a drum roll. I wanted to put a drum roll in there.
Sorry, it makes me nauseous to even think about climbing that, let alone racing it. Again, Annemiek van Vleuten, I think, will be quite pleased with that inclusion. There will not be a lot of climbers who, if she's at her best, can match her up there. But it'll certainly add a lot of prestige to the women's course. And I think that the women deserve that. But Joel, I hate to be critical, but I'm super bummed that it finishes on a time trial.
I was
so
about
the eighth
to ask.
Stage, 22-kilometre time trial.
The first time trial, But at the first coming at the end, you don't like it though. It's a
I
bit.
don't.
It seems like they've made some leaps forward, but that's a bit of a step back, doesn't it?
Well, it's very non-traditional, and I am a bit of a traditionalist. I mean, I love innovation in the sport, but I do also think that it's a sport of such beautiful tradition, and some of that, I think should be kept, to be honest.
Yep. Okay.
So if you compare the men's and the women's parcours, for example, the men largely exist across the bottom mid of France. Like, to actually call it a Tour de France is a little bit off, given the geographical location of all of the stages from, the lower left corner in Basque, and then up through all of the mountain ranges. They then have a very long transfer to get to Paris, to finish in Paris. Yeah. So they're really only going to Paris very symbolically for that finish, because that is the tradition. I'm a bit bummed that 2 editions in and we don't have a single double up. We don't have that moment of tradition that we're entrenching in the women's race like we have in the men. So there isn't something that we can always compare, like they've most often done in the men's race, with that finish into Paris. So that, it kind of, I don't love that they're doing a time trial. I don't love that the sprinters don't get to battle through. And a reason for that as well, Joel, is if you're a pure sprinter like Lorena Vibes, you get to stage 6, stage 7 is the Tourmalet, stage 8 is a time trial. Yeah. Like, what are they fighting for? I love that you have the sprint stage in Paris, because you're then watching Mark Cavendish on every single stage trying to make time cut, fighting to get to Paris, to get to that sprint. And I feel like the female sprinters have had that taken away from them.
They've missed a trick with that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. I had a chat to Sarah Roy about it this morning, and she was just waking up to have a bit of a course review and to take a look. But she said she needed to take a bit of a deeper dive into the tour, and the route for next year. But that a time trial at the end seemed a little bit off and very non-traditional. And as a sprinter, it denies her the chance to push through and finish with that motivation as well. So
it's a shame, because no, look, I it's fair criticism, because there's been a few strides. Stage 4, I think it is. No, stage 6 I want to talk about, on the fringes of Toulouse there. One of the most oppressive places on the planet when it comes to conditions, like wind and that kind of thing. It's going to be downright oppressive. So that fight to earn that time cut, to be part of the action, and then it gets to the old, let's just whistle down with a 22K time trial to finish it off. It is a bit disappointing, but there are some great stages in there.
There are some beautiful stages. I think what really occurs to me when you're researching this and you're watching the presentations and you're hearing about all of these moments in history, not just about which towns are famous for their wooden toys, although that is very interesting too, is that there's so much history on the men's side because they've been able to build it over so many decades. And I want that for the women. So I want them to be able to build these traditions where you can talk about the history of it in quite a consistent way. Yeah. I won't harp on about it, but that's a bit of a bummer. But I have to say, I noticed that they start the women near Clermont-Ferrand. Now, the biggest reason I know that region is because there's an airport there. And I have to wonder, Joel, is that why the men and the women, it plays such a starring role? Have they got like cheap flights in and out? I don't know.
Well, can you blame them? Can you blame them if you can jag a cheap flight in this era?
I know. It might even be a Ryanair airport, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. So I wonder if they've done a deal to get the athletes there. Cut price. I don't know.
They've given them all a lounge pass, an extra leg room, and an extra bag, and it's all good.
Hold on, since when have Ryanair had lounges, Joel?
Just now. They literally just this morning. I'm pretty sure they're opening in advance of the tour.
Part of the announcement, yes.
Yes, indeed.
On the wheelhouse. Hold on, actually, I'm gonna pick you up there for a second, Joel, because while we're talking Ryanair, you know what else has happened this week in Tour land is that Ireland have said that they're going to bid for the Tour de France start. Northern
Now, I
Ireland
love this.
and the Republic of Ireland are doing it together. They're looking to do it together. Well, I'm interested in your thoughts on that because I find it a little bit bizarre, to be honest.
It's an interesting one because obviously it's a good initiative for the North and South to work together on anything ever. That's great. Cost is a thing. Now, Ireland didn't send a team to Wollongong as we know well due to costs. This would cost them 30 million euros. 30 million euros to stage the Grand Depart. Now, the thing with that is, as some listeners and some fans and some analysts have pointed out, that's a lot of money in a time of money struggles. That could build you an indoor velodrome. That could build you something that would be potentially more productive for the sport in Ireland in difficult times. Where's the money coming from? All of that. I'm just curious to see how they plan on getting this all together. What would be better if you're going to come up with that kind of money? What would be better for Irish cycling? Hosting that, or infrastructure investment in, youth, all that kind of thing? I don't know. It's an interesting one.
Yeah, that's why I found it so interesting because I think that right there, just as we opened our Tour de France chat talking about the beautiful scenics that we saw and the tourism, I think that is a very clear message that bidding for the start of a Tour de France actually has nothing to do with cycling and everything to do with tourism and very different budgets that they're looking at, which I think would be very disappointing for the cyclists in Ireland to feel like they're trying to portray to the world that they're so cycling friendly. Meanwhile, you can't even get yourself to the World Championships because they don't have enough money for that. So,
well, that's the thing, isn't it? Like the optics of having that event obviously is massive, and the benefit of it, the revenue side of it's huge. But you've got to think about the development of the sport and missing out on the World Champs. All of that, it's interesting. Hasn't been there I think it was 1998. It was overshadowed by a rather large doping scandal. The Giro started in Belfast in 2014. They've got some form. It's interesting to see how it'll play out, but it's one of those ones where the politicians are making a lot of noise about it. This will be great for Ireland. The riders themselves, the governing bodies, a little bit quieter on it at this stage. They're saying what they need to say to be like, yes, we love what the politicians are telling us to love and be behind. But it's not necessarily... It doesn't seem like they're all like super duper excited about this. Like when you look at Wollongong, everyone, except for Caleb when he missed out on selection, was just super duper pumped to have that event on Aussie shores and to get behind it. I'm not seeing that. It's very early days, but I'm just saying I don't think they're all on the same. They're not all singing from the same song sheet, Kate Bates.
No, well, look, let's hope it's not as drawn out as Mark Cavendish's announcement on his team as to whether that'll go ahead or not.
We love talking about matchups. We've been speaking a lot about Remco, Pogacar, Vingegaard. I want to add one to the mix. Egan Bernal, 2023 Tour de France. He got on the radio in Colombia and he said, you know what? Hold my beer. I'm setting my sights on the Tour next year after an absolutely a cataclysmic accident earlier this year. The fact that he's even getting on his feet to go into the radio station to have a chat is beggars belief. Riding the Tour, though, and what we've been saying about the nature of the course, what a massive ambition for him.
It'll be so good to see him back there, and just knowing that he has the belief in himself and the confidence is just fantastic in itself. But it's a great course for him too. So I think if he was going to come back to any, that is a very good one. And I might also add that on that same return from horrific injury train Chris Froome is on, I think this course is great for him too. Could be an opportunity for him to win a stage. So there could be some really inspiring stories on the slopes of these giant mountains that are featuring in 2023 for the likes of Bernal, for Froome. I'm looking forward to it. I think that there is so many romantic parts of cycling, aren't there? Like
this is brilliant.
You know, and already the stories are starting to unfold, 8 months out from stage one.
Yeah. Well, look, he's been back on the bike, of course. He did Denmark. He did the Deutschland Tour in August. He's ramping up. He's targeted a few races in 23. Paris-Nice is one of them, and a couple of others. and he's now said that the overall plan is getting to the Tour. I think it's remarkable, and hello, box of tissues, tear jar if he gets there, because there will be scenes. Hashtag scenes, Kate Bates.
Hashtag there's a documentary in that.
There is a documentary. There is a documentary. There will be a Tour de France documentary on Netflix next year. We'll talk about that in a future episode because you're going to be so excited to delve into those details. We're going to submit names for it as well on the Wheelhouse podcast. Let's move to the women's side of the sport. Now, a mate of yours, a very dear mate, a future member of the Dutch Trident, I say, Fem Van Empel, is absolutely carving up cyclocross. 3 straight wins, 3 from 3, a World Cup 3 from 3 for her. She's 49 points ahead in the World Cup standings after 3 rounds. Put down your glasses, forget about it. Game over.
Yes. Well, it was built to be a massive cyclocross season because Marianne Vos is back. We've got Lucinda Brand is also there. She's the defending World Cup winner. Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, of course, who's just come off the gravel world title, the mountain bike cross country world title, the short cross. She's just had a ripper of a season. She's doing the cyclocross season as well. But Van Empel, I mean, give me the confidence of a 20-year-old.
Right.
Just like we were talking about the confidence of Ethan Hayter. I mean, I think that she's just riding outside her skin. It's fantastic. But Lucinda Brand, I will say, she broke her hand in the warm-up at the last World Cup and had to have surgery for that. So she will be out for an undetermined amount of time at the moment. So that maybe takes out one of the top competitors. But I think the tides have very much turned from the next generation to being the current generation. And yeah, look, there's a subscription website, newsletter, let's call it, called Women's Cycling Weekly. So a shout out to the ladies that run that, Matilda and Amy. And they go into very great detail about the cyclocross scene and the women they're in. And it's just, they all have really interesting stories, an immense amount of talent. And for Van Empel to have gone 3 from 3, you know, we look at Van Aert, we look at Marianne Vos, we look at Van der Poel and their dominance and how incredible they are. And right under our eyes is unfolding another incredibly dominant young rider in Van Empel. So exciting. She's like, massive. Hold my beer. We're 3 rounds in. Hold my beer. I'll see you after Christmas.
2 in the States, 1 in the Czech Republic at Tabor. Good on her. Exciting stuff. Now, I want to talk, if you don't mind, on the Wheelhouse podcast. So this is lovely, lovely scenes, but it's just not right at the same time. I want to talk about the Afghan National Championships. Now, the show must go on, and it did go on in Switzerland for very sad political reasons, of course. The Taliban being in power in Afghan means that women aren't allowed to compete in sport. And many of them have been forced to flee their country. They're living in different parts of the world. There's about 50 cyclists that took part in the mountains of Aigle, Switzerland. Now, the Hashimi sisters did the business, crossed the line together. They unfurled the flag. The national pride was on full display. They embraced. There were real tears. Fariba Hashimi is 19 years old. Her sister Yıldız is 22. The future's looking bright, but very tough for them to be able to find somewhere to ride their bikes because, as I say, since last August, women aren't allowed to play sports. They can't have government jobs. They can't educate themselves in secondary schools, that kind of thing. It's completely heartbreaking, but it's good to see the sport of cycling supporting the growth of the sport regardless, and these women being able to compete.
It's really emotional scene seeing it. I mean, even to be exiled from your country simply for being a female and wanting to do sport or wanting an education, yet they cross the line with their flag because they're so proud to be Afghani. They're just not proud of the political associations there. And I think that is a situation that as Australians, we just can't really ever understand for all of the debate that goes on local shores, you know, whether it be in Australia or the US or the UK. Certainly we all spend a lot of time talking about politics, but the reality doesn't hit us quite in the same way as it does these women. They're so inspirational, and I'm really pleased that they've been able to hold a national championships for them, albeit in Switzerland. And I'm really pleased that the local cycling community there has come together to enable that and to allow the women to qualify for the bigger international events. And you can bet your bottom dollar that there will be a huge number of women who just take enormous strength and inspiration off these athletes, that it is worth standing up for what you believe in and being true to yourself and fighting for that, and not just being pushed down by somebody else's views or policies, as it well may be with the Taliban. It's a really hard topic, I think, because we so often say that sport and politics shouldn't mix. There's a degree of that I agree with, but I also think that humanity goes so far above and beyond politics, and sport is such an incredibly strong platform to stand on. And it's an incredible story, and I hope that we continue to see these women given the opportunities and supported on their journey through sport.
Well, I just hope news is able to reach back home for these guys, because the inspiration that they're providing is incredible. And I just want to give a shout out, because we don't often do that. We usually shit can them, but I'll give a shout out to the UCI because, of course, their headquarters is there as well, and they're getting right behind this, and they're supporting, as we say, giving these athletes a chance to compete, to pursue their dreams, and do it in impressive fashion. Now, staying with Fariba, the victor, she's 19 years old. And she's getting onto the Pro Tour. She's joined Premier Tech Roland World Tour Team Israel, which in itself is politically a really, really interesting move, because there's no love lost between Taliban and Israel in general. This is massive, and I kind of like it as a career furtherment, but a little bit of an act of defiance as well. Good on her for seizing the opportunity and carpe diem, as they say.
Yeah, I agree. I think we'll look back in the future and she will be one of the biggest influences for young women who are suffering under the Taliban that we will see, because this kind of move is really powerful and it's very symbolic. And it's also really important, even within the culture of professional cycling, whether it be in the men or the women, to have different people, like different backgrounds in the team, to teach you different things. And the strength of some of the teams is that diversity and understanding people's different points of view and work ethic. And I think that really strengthens. And so I think it's a really good move. I don't think it'll be the last Afghan rider we see signed to one of the professional teams. And so, I kind of put it out to a lot of the big teams, actually, that these are the women who could add so much to your team. And I'm not just talking about on the results sheet, but in a broader way. And I hope that a lot of the teams get behind the female athletes and sign them. But good luck to her. She's a real go-getter, hey? She's one of these women that, like, the girls, we've got 3 little girls in our family, that they read books about these kinds of women and they get huge amounts of inspiration and strength for them. So we might start on a little children's book for that with the kids, see where we can follow her story.
Gee, the production slate expands and expands. We've got docos happening. Now we've got children's books, video games. We're making video games as well. You make such a good point, though. The value in these athletes goes a long, long way with the inspiration they provide and the resilience that they display. And I hope more pro teams recognise that, because you're absolutely right. It's not just helping them out. It's actually a smart, decent business decision to support these careers as well. So awesome to see. Some sadder news closer to home. One of Australia's oldest road race, I believe, the Jayco Herald Sun Tour. It's off for a 3rd straight year. I want to ask you about this. I'm really, really super curious about the statement that came out. Australia's oldest stage race has been cancelled for a 3rd straight year. There are now genuine health and work safety issues for riders and staff. What are they on about there?
I thought that was an interesting line too. I put out the feelers a bit to see if I could get a little bit more context around that. And at every turn, the oracle, I thought, who would have all the info, John Trevorrow, he said he didn't have much more to say than was in some of the news articles. I mean, I think one of the biggest walls they came up against was the fact that when the event stopped around COVID times, and due to that, they ended their association with the event organisers, GTR, like the logistics organisers, and they haven't got a new partner for that. And I think that current conditions, it's almost impossible to get, labour is a real struggle at the moment to get workforce. And so I'm wondering if that comment is more to do with, in order to do it, they would have been cutting some corners and putting some people at unacceptable risks in order just to get it done. And so it wasn't worth it. Aside from kind of the veiled comments around that, Joel, I think what for Australians is a real bummer is that plays a massive part in development for the NRS to get a bit of a mix, because we had our NRS teams racing with some international teams as well. We've had Chris Froome there. Jai Hindley is one of our most famous winners, of course. And I'd like to point, and a friend, of course. And I'd like to point to the fact that the trophy, like at the Olympics and stuff, we see them like kissing gold medals and whatnot, that are smaller than the palm of your hand. The trophy for the Herald Sun Tour is this beautiful glass crystal thing. I wish I could find a better word than thing, but that looks like a wheel, and it is giant, and it's almost like take your medal. Look at this thing. It's quite an impressive, beautiful trophy that they get given. And we've had Dylan Van Baarle. We've had some really big names race the Jayco Herald Sun Tour. I know Jerry Ryan really wanted it to happen. He's, Jerry Jayco, but he can't do it on his own. And we'll have to get the Herald Sun really back and motivating it to get it going. They'll already need to start planning now for 2024 to bring it back. And they have to work with Cadel Evans, Great Ocean Road Race, and the Tour Down Under, because the teams jump from one race to the other. We need to keep that, keep that flow going.
The National Road Series also in some trouble, as you say, sponsorship, and they need to find a lifeline. Just throwing it out there. Gina Rinehart, the mining magnate, who's just torn up a $15 million sponsorship with Netball Australia over. Yes.
Look, there's a lot of controversy around Gina Rinehart and her mining money, and Australian athletes not wanting to take that money. I don't know that she's much of a bike rider, Joel. I will say that she's put a tremendous amount of money into Australian sport in the same way that Jerry Ryan has. And but I don't know. She might have, once bitten, twice shy. When it comes
I've texted her. I've sent her a text, the same as we did with Ben O'Connor, confirming. Yeah, no reply just yet. No, not. You know how you see that they've read it and they haven't replied. It's that. Yeah. The photos there. She's seen it. She hasn't replied yet. She's got a bit on. But we'll keep working on it.
Is it like? Did you say like, "Hey Gigi" or something, or is it just like more formal, like "Dear Gina"?
I call her Mineheart. Gina Rinehart. Gina
Rinehart. Well, while we're talking about sponsors and Gina Rinehart, and her controversy, one of the kind of darlings of the Australian business world is, of course, Atlassian and Scott Farquhar. Everybody loves those guys for what they do around sustainability, and very, very exciting, Joel. I know that Scott Farquhar is a bike rider and incidentally went to school with my sister, but there's another funny little link because my sister just happens to be a genius like Scott Farquhar as well. So they went to one of these very talented selective schools for children with big brains. I think that's the formal name of the school. Anywho, he is the co-founder of a company called Skip Capital, and they have announced this week that they are going into partnership with ARA Cycling Academy. So the Australian Cycling Academy, sponsored by ARA, out of the Sunshine Coast. How good is this? We've got the Atlassian mob invested, Skip Capital it's called, and that means that that team, ARA Cycling, will be able to do just tremendous things in terms of development of young athletes. They also go to the university at the Sunshine Coast. This is the biggest news we've had in kind of domestic cycling in a very long time. And so I'm just thrilled for Henk Vogels and Matt Wilson, Ben Kirsten, the whole team up there on the sunny coast, who have been just working tirelessly to get some backing for this project they believe in so much. So that's really cool. And I can confirm, we're in the habit, Joel, of like half confirming guests that we may hope to have but haven't convinced to come on yet.
Such as Gina Rinehart, yeah.
So I am very, very sure that we can get some of the riders and Henk Vogels to come on the show. So we'll tease that a little bit because I think it would be sensational to hear from them and what's going on in that program. They're just up the road from the bunker, the sunny coast.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Not far away at all. About an hour north for anybody
not
not familiar with Brisbane and the Sunshine Coast.
Let's say an hour and not tell them about the true nature of the highways to get up there, because it's maybe an hour, 2 hours.
If you are able to drive at the prescribed speed limit, it would be an hour.
Yes, I completely agree. No arguments there.
So let's go with that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, please visit the beautiful Sunshine Coast. No, it's awesome. It's so good to see when we're talking about a shot in the arm in the domestic scene, because we're seeing troubles. It's not just in Australia, the US as well. So many riders went to Europe during COVID, stayed in Europe. That's a problem for sponsors who want to see them on the ground in the US to obviously be hoisting the colours there. I was going to ask the question, how worried are we domestically, Australia, the US, Great Britain as well? We're talking about sponsorships, controversial sponsorships to stay afloat. Like, it's not just cycling, it's sport everywhere where money is hard to come by because priorities have changed and people are a little bit more worried about where their money should be going. And that all translates into sponsorship dollars drying up. How big of a concern is this?
It's a big concern. For domestic racing in Australia, for a number of years, they've been trying to come up with some more innovative ways to solve that problem of how do we get our domestic riders the race days that they need and deserve, and the sponsors the access to the investment returns that they also deserve, so that it's not just the kind of equation where sponsors are coming in just because they love cycling and not because they're genuinely going to get anything out of it. But it is a good thing to look at something like ARA, who have not only developed a team and they've got this association with the university, but they've also gone into event management and partnered with some event managers to put together their own races to make sure that these events are continuing to happen, to make sure that their sponsors are getting service. So I think that is really important. But I reckon that we suffer from the biggest cliche comment ever, which is no need to reinvent the wheel. I actually think there's a need to reinvent the way that here in Australia, but also the US, the UK, how we approach domestic leagues and sport and try and build them up, whether they're a development path simply for World Tour kind of racing or World Series, or whether they are standalone and wonderful events on their own. I think they do need to reinvent the wheel and really just go back to basics, figure out how to make it and then rebuild it, rather than little tweaks here and there. But they're all Band-Aid solutions and ultimately not actually solving the problem, which is there's not enough money, there's not enough athletes.
Yeah, a problem that will continue to be dissected on the Wheelhouse podcast. Kate Bates, you're not here, but geez, you bring the goods wherever you are. I know you secretly reveal. I'm still not ruling out that you're in Paris.
But I am chatty Cathy today because I am excited. Yes, likewise, Joel. And, you and Merksy can go out for a nice lunch after this while I, head for a wander down to the Champs-Élysées.
Well, I'll leave you with this. This is the Wheelhouse podcast, brought to you by Star Wars This Week Only. My name's Joel Spreadborough. Kate Bates, we'll do it all again.
We'll see you next week.
Take care of yourself. Wear your helmet. Ride safely. The Wheelhouse is produced by River City Studios for Listener. Executive produced by Luke Mears and the mysterious Merksy. It's written and hosted by Kate Bates and me, Joel Spreadborough.